Hashtag Don't Let Me Die. A Wild West story. The dust kicked up by Sheriff Mason's horse hadn't settled when he heard the desperate cry echoing across the prairie. Don't let me die. The voice was thin, carried on a hot Kansas wind like a prayer. Mason spurred his mare toward the sound, his hand instinctively checking the colt at his hip. What he found behind a cluster of weathered rocks made his blood run cold. A young woman lay crumpled against a boulder, her calico dress torn and stained dark with blood. Her face was pale as winter snow, but her eyes burned with a fierce determination to live. She couldn't have been more than 22, with auburn hair that caught the dying sunlight. "Ma'am," Mason said, dismounting quickly. "What happened here?" She tried to speak, but only managed to whisper. With trembling hands, she lifted the hem of her bloody dress. Mason's jaw tightened at what he saw. A bullet wound in her thigh, still bleeding freely. "The Dalton gang," she managed to say. They took everything. Shot me when I tried to run." Mason knew the name well. The Dalton brothers had been terrorizing ranchers across 3 counties, stealing cattle and leaving destruction in their wake. But shooting an unarmed woman, that was a new low, even for them. "What's your name, miss?" he asked, already tearing strips from his shirt to make a tourniquet. Sarah Mitchell. My family's ranch is about 2 miles north." She winced as he applied pressure to the wound. "They killed my father, burned our house." Mason worked quickly, his experienced hands steady despite the rage building in his chest. He'd seen too much senseless violence in his 15 years wearing the badge, but something about this young woman's courage struck him deeply. "You're going to be fine, Miss Mitchell," he said, though he wasn't entirely certain. The wound was serious, and the nearest doctor was in Dodge City, a hard day's ride away. "Please," she whispered, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "Don't let me die out here like this. My mother, she's waiting for me in California. I promised I'd come." Mason met her eyes. In them, he saw not just fear, but an unbreakable spirit. "I give you my word, ma'am. We're getting you to Doc Henderson." He lifted her carefully onto his horse, then climbed up behind her, holding her steady against his chest. As they rode toward town, Sarah drifted in and out consciousness, but each time she woke, she whispered the same words, "Don't let me die." The ride to Dodge City was the longest of Mason's life. Sarah's breathing grew shallow, and more than once he thought he'd lost her. But each time, she'd stir and grip his arm, her will to live burning as bright as a prairie fire. They reached Doc Henderson's office just as the sun painted the sky deep orange. The old physician took one look at Sarah and immediately got to work. Mason paced the waiting room for 3 hours, his boots wearing a path in the wooden floor. Finally, Doc Henderson emerged, wiping his hands on a blood-stained towel. "She's going to make it, Sheriff. Lost a lot of blood, but the bullet missed the major vessels. She's at the constitution of a Mustang, that one." Mason felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Can I see her?" Sarah was awake when he entered the small recovery room, though she looked fragile as porcelain against the white sheets. But when she smiled, Mason saw the same fierce spirit that had kept her alive on the prairie. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said softly. "You kept your promise." "Yes, ma'am, and I'm making you another one." Mason's voice was hard as iron. "The Dalton gang is going to answer for what they did to you and your family." Sarah nodded, then reached into a pocket of her torn dress. She pulled out a small silver locket, tarnished but unbroken. "This was my mother's. The Daltons didn't get everything." As Mason looked at the locket, he realized that sometimes the most valuable things can be stolen. Courage, hope, and the unbreakable human spirit that refuses to surrender even in the darkest hour. 3 weeks later, the Dalton gang was behind bars, and Sarah Mitchell was on a stage to California, carrying her mother's locket and a story of survival that would be told around campfires for generations to come. The last thing she said to Sheriff Mason before leaving was the same thing she'd whispered on the prairie, but this time with a smile. "You didn't let me die." And he never forgot the lesson she taught him, that sometimes the greatest victories come not from the battles we win, but from the lives we save along the way. The end.